Okay. Well, hello everybody. This week's online program, as part of our ways to combat just being a conformist in recovery, is a little lesson from psychology. There's a really famous psychologist, a guy by the name of Rollo May. And one of Rollo May's key points, he says, if you really want to understand why people today suffer, one of the main reasons is they're willing to give up who they are as a person and their beliefs and values in order to fit in to a group. And when you think about it, that actually kind of makes a lot of sense. How would you explain, for example, how about Nazi Germany? Here's people who are afraid, who little self-esteem, all of a sudden band together and buy into this nonsense, and it was unbelievable. They would buy into it in these beliefs that, you know, all our problems are caused by the Jews or, you know, the gypsies or whatever. And they bought into this hook, line, and sinker. In other words, and it's not that everyone in Germany was a terrible person. They had, I would think most people, just like us, they have compassion and they have love and tolerance. But they bought into this. So they're going to give up their very values, their very beliefs in order to fit in with the whole. And this actually, if you go throughout history of the 20th century, is actually a kind of common phenomenon. And people who have these really rigid beliefs, these are people typically who really have no faith in themselves. And I'm thinking, like a lot of people in early recovery, they don't really think very much of themselves either. In fact, they have what we call low self-esteem. Like their own values, their own beliefs, they really don't trust them. In fact, there's some treatment centers that actually go out of their way to sort of force the client to start distrusting precisely what he believes in. Because the argument being, of course, it is those beliefs that got him into hot water to begin with. But one of the keys to recovery, you know, in that chip you get from AA, you know, to thine own self be true, I mean, that seems to fly in the face of a lot of those ideas, right? And as you all know, like we're great believers at Sunshine Coast of this idea of be true to yourself, figuring out what you want to do and then going after it, regardless of what the majority says or thing. I mean, even my own recovery, I mean, I remember my first sponsor who basically told me, look, you don't know anything, right? Go, you're going to go to, this is what you're going to do, you're going to go to 90 meetings, 90 days, you're going to sit at the back, and God gave you one mouth, two ears, use them appropriately, because frankly, you don't know squat. And maybe, just maybe, you know, if you go there for a year, you'll learn something, and then anything you say will then have some value. But until then, I mean, you're just, yeah, I mean, nothing you say is of any worth at all. So in other words, he was telling me basically, he had the answer, here was the answer, and I had to distrust everything that I believed in order to join with this group if I wanted to improve my life. Right? Same thing with, if you remember that book, James Fry's A Million Little Pieces, right? He quotes his counselor telling him, you have to do everything that we tell you to do, even if you think it's ridiculous. Okay? Because James Fry, I mean, left to his own devices is an absolute disaster. So he has to give up everything about himself, his beliefs, his values, and buy into the official program, and that way he'll get recovery. At any rate, the success rate of that, according to research, isn't very good, right? And Bill Wilson, I think, really understood this concept, right? That idea of be true to yourself, right? Don't forget who you are. And even to the point of start, you know, look around, open yourself up. Take in suggestions, that's fine. There's no problem with that, you know. Expand yourself. But just don't follow blindly. Don't follow, you know, without thinking about it, just because some other person said, oh, this is the way. Okay? So, a little lesson from psychology this week. And if you want, Rollo May's written lots of books. I'm sure you can go pick up a handful of his books at any secondhand bookstore. And in any case, you can get them out of the library. And it's quite a brilliant man. Okay, yeah, read this week's online and fill out the questions, send them off to Darren, and we'll see you next week.